Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, you're listening to the voice of the American Dissident. It's been a couple weeks since I broadcasted. For those of you that are wondering, I didn't go anywhere. I've just been busy. I've been watching the situations unfold, especially with the bombing at the Boston Marathon. And to be quite frank, I've been busy preparing. Tonight I was watching a long-forgotten TV program called The Day After. I watched this show as a child, and I learned valuable lessons from watching that TV show. Whether or not you think that a nuclear war could happen, you should be prepared for any conceivable emergency. I learned valuable lessons from that program. One of them is that you should never, ever procrastinate. As of right now, in the United States, ammunition is in such short supply that even police forces are having trouble getting their orders filled. 22 ammunition, ladies and gentlemen, is almost non-existent. As a matter of fact, I went to the local gun store today and I tried to purchase some 22 ammunition. There was one box in the local gun store, the one that I visited, and believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the price on that box of ammunition was $80 for a box, a brick of 500 rounds of 22 ammunition. Fortunately for me, I was awake 20 long years ago, ladies and gentlemen, and I had took the steps long ago to protect myself and my loved ones from the chaos that is going to come in this country. And it is going to come, ladies and gentlemen. Our economy is not getting any better. Jobs are not being created at the rate needed to sustain a healthy working population. The quote-unquote media, mainstream media, likes to tout and report gleefully that the unemployment rate is dropping. Well, 2.5 million more people are not receiving an unemployment check. Therefore, they are not counted amongst those that are unemployed. The biggest enemy that we face is wasting time. You can sit around Facebook or all the other social networks all you want, and you can share your pictures and share your photos and share your blogs till your little heart's content. But what is it doing to protect yourself and your family? You need, ladies and gentlemen, while you still can, and while they're still going to allow you to do so, to buy an emergency food supply. I don't know where you're going to get it. I don't know how much you're going to spend. But you need to do something. Something is always better than nothing. In that movie, The Day After, one of the scenes in that movie that so was embedded in my mind as a child was watching hundreds of people battling one another in a grocery store. Can you imagine, in any conceivable national emergency, what it would be like to go, especially if you're living in a metro area, to a grocery store and having to buy supplies for yourself and your family? you would be facing what is commonly termed, for those that are not awake, as the sheep. The sheep would be angry, scared, and they would be more than willing to start riots, and they would be more willing than willing to take whatever they could from you. So, as of this moment, I admonish those listening to buy themselves a supply of food. As for myself, I estimate that I have about 6 months built up. That is not quite nearly enough, but I can always augment my food supply by hunting and fishing. There are a lot of people in the United States that don't know how to do either one. Hunting and fishing are valuable skills to learn, because in an emergency, if our transportation system breaks down, there will be no trucks delivering food to any city in the United States, and that means that you have to have a means to feed yourself. So while you still can, and if you can find it, you can still buy the weapons. I suggest that everybody buy themselves a .22 long rifle weapon. There's nothing that you cannot kill with a .22. And of course, the ammunition is in short supply, and when stocks are replenished, either online or in gun stores, they are being severely rationed. And I live in a gun-owning state, ladies and gentlemen. I live in a state where quite a lot of people hunt. Some 650,000 people take to the woods in the fall in my state to hunt small game, and they hunt deer. And this is April, ladies and gentlemen, and ammunition is not in a very good supply. And I'm going to try to find that one blog just to prove it to you. And if I can find it on this one, I might have to go to another one, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm going to show you just what I mean. And I believe it was in this one. These are two good blogs that I use and that I read quite frequently, simply because, ladies and gentlemen, everything that's written in these two blogs are sourced, that you can go to the source. The man that writes these blogs is concise and to the point, and everything that he puts in his blog is backed up with official documents, official articles from other sources. And I'm going to just try to keep this as close as possible here so I can share it with you. And I'm going to go to the 3D mix and we're going to minimize it. What it says here, ladies and gentlemen, is unprecedented shortages of ammo, physical gold, and physical silver. Maybe we'll just zoom into this a little bit closer here so you can see it a lot better. And I'm going to start to read this. All over the United States, we are witnessing unprecedented shortages of ammunition, physical gold, and physical silver. Recent events have helped fuel a buying frenzy that threatens to spiral out of control. Gun shops all over the nation are reporting that they have never seen it this bad. And in many cases, any ammo that they are able to get is being sold even before it hits the shelves. The ammo shortage has already become so severe that police departments all over America are saying that they are being told that it's going to take 6 months to a year to get their orders. In fact, many police departments have begun to trade and barter with one another to get the ammo that they need. Meanwhile, the takedown of paper gold and paper silver has unleashed an avalanche of panic buying of physical gold and physical silver all over the planet. In the United States, some dealers are charging premiums of more than 25% over the spot price for gold and silver, and they are getting it. People are paying these prices even though they are being told that delivery will not happen for a month or two in many cases. Some dealers are feverishly taking as many orders as they can, and they are just hoping that they are able to get the physical gold and silver to eventually fill these orders. And I'm going to go to the full article. And we are going to go down, and we're going to continue as soon as the page gets completely loaded. The shortages and rationing, ladies and gentlemen, of ammunition at gun shops all over America just seem to be getting worse. The following is from an article by a gun owner down in Texas named Brad Meyer. If you'd like to see a normally sullen sales clerk chortle with derisive pleasure, just walk into just about any gun range, sporting goods store, or mass merchandiser and try to buy a couple boxes of .22 ammunition. Gun enthusiasts are up in arms about a nationwide shortage of ammunition. Handgun ammo in general is particularly difficult to find. When you do find it, there are restrictions on the amount you can buy and how much you're going to be paying for it. And ladies and gentlemen, that is an absolute fact, because here in my area, in every gun shop that's close to me, and including Walmart, one of the biggest retailers on the planet, and the sale of ammunition is restricted to 3 boxes per person per day. Continuing with this article, while the list of hard-to-find ammo is long, .22 long rifle and 9mm handgun ammunition are particularly difficult to find in quantity, and the few places that have it are charging a premium rate and usually limiting purchases to 1 box per person per day. And up here, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, it's 3 boxes. Many gun owners try to find ammunition by going on the internet, but things have gotten so tight that now any ammo that becomes available online is often gone within seconds. Within seconds, ladies and gentlemen. There are websites where people across the country post links to where ammunition is available, and it sells out within seconds, not minutes or hours, seconds. Unfortunately, all of this demand is also driving up prices. Just check out what Meyer says is happening to the price of standard .22 ammo. The demand is driving up the cost of ammunition. 6 months ago, standard .22 ammo, the most common type of bullet produced in the world, could be had in bulk for around 5 cents a piece. It is now going for 50 cents or more on some websites, and people are paying it. But this shortage is not just affecting private citizens. According to Newmax, police departments all over the nation are dealing with ammo shortages unlike anything that they have ever seen before. Sheriff Anthony DeMeo of Nye County, Nevada, was told his department's regular order of 50,000 rounds could take up to a year to arrive. This is the first time ever I've heard that there's a problem with a law enforcement agency getting ammo for their agency, DeMeo told the Las Vegas Sun. These departments are not alone. Law enforcement agencies in Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia are among those that are having to limit how much they give their officers due to the shortage. Could you imagine waiting up to a year to get more ammunition? A recent article posted on CNSnews.com had some more examples of police departments that are reporting that there's a massive wait to get more ammo. Chief Pryor of Rawlingwood, Texas, says of the shortage, "We started making phone calls and realized that there is a waiting list up to a year. We have to limit the amount of times we go to train because we want to keep an adequate stock. Nobody can get us ammunition at this point," says Sergeant Jason LaCrosse of the Bozeman, Montana Police Department. LaCrosse says that manufacturers are so far behind that they won't even give him a quote for an order. "We have no estimated time on when it will even be available," LaCrosse says. This is insane, and it is insane, ladies and gentlemen. But there's an agenda behind it all. And we are going to get to what is causing this problem here in a few seconds. What in the world could be causing such an ammo crunch? Well, certainly the demand for guns and ammo has been trending up in recent years, especially since Barack Obama was elected. But that doesn't fully account for the shortages that we are witnessing at the moment. So what is going on? Well, some people believe that the federal government is responsible. It has been reported that they have signed contracts to purchase up to 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition, And that is correct, ladies and gentlemen, because I have the purchase orders. I have seen the purchase orders, and I have them in PDF on my computer. According to Forbes, this amount of ammunition would be enough to fight a hot war in America for 20 years. The Denver Post on February the 15th ran an Associated Press article entitled Homeland Security Aims to Buy 1.6 Billion Rounds of Ammo. So far, to little notice, it confirmed that the Department of Homeland Security has issued an open purchase order for 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition. As reported elsewhere, some of this purchase order is for hollow point rounds, forbidden by international law for use in war, along with a frightening amount specialized for snipers. Also reported elsewhere, at the height of the Iraq War, the Army was expending less than 6 million rounds a month. Therefore, 1.6 billion rounds would be enough to sustain a hot war for 20 plus years in America. Could this be a way that the Obama administration is trying to restrict the amount of ammo that gets in the hands of private citizens? That is what some people are suggesting. According to talk radio host Michael Savage, the ammo contracts that the federal government has signed give them priority over all other purchases. What Homeland Security is doing here is they're issuing a contract to buy up that amount of ammo if they want it. It is a way to control the amount of market that's available on the commercial market at any time. If they go to the ammo manufacturer and say, give me 50 million rounds, give me another 30 million rounds. If they periodically do this in increments, they're going to control how much ammo is available on the commercial market. As part of their contract, it stipulates in there that when the government calls and says, give us another quantity, that everything they make has to go to the government priority one before any of it goes to the commercial market. So if they get nervous, all they have to do is use that contract that they have in place. And they just say, give us some more. And I'm going to bring this in a little closer so it's a lot easier for you to see. So whenever the government wants to tighten the supply of ammunition, all they have to do is invoke their contracts and order more for themselves. Meanwhile, Obama appears to be doing other things to restrict the amount of ammo that gets in the hands of private gun owners. And this is very important, ladies and gentlemen, because Barack Obama, the President of the United States, has implemented, without the consent of Congress, through executive order, certain parts of the UN treaty that came up recently for a vote in that body, and he is going to completely eliminate the importation of foreign ammunition into this country. And if you don't believe that, wait 6 months down the road, America, when you can go to the store, and if you got your favorite SKS or favorite military style weapon that you want to use, and if you want to buy, let's say, Wolf ammunition that's made in Russia for your SKS or your AK-47, you're going to find that it's not going to be on the shelves any longer, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to go up here. You are going to see, ladies and gentlemen, the complete elimination for most ammunition from the store shelf, because we have, ladies and gentlemen, a communist sitting in the White House. A communist, ladies and gentlemen. A man that, as I've said on a previous broadcast, in his own words, not mine, that he actively sought out Marxist professors while in college. Their goal is to completely disarm the American people and make them slaves in their new world order. And Joe Biden freely said it, the Vice President of the United States, what was it, 2 weeks ago, that it is the task of the Obama administration to create a new world order. I find it maddening in my mind, ladies and gentlemen, that people living within the United States can be so ignorant and, quite frankly, so stupid that they can't see what is going on. You know, as a child, I had many things that influenced me in life, and I like to read a lot, and I still like to read a lot. I read the book Aesop's Fables, the collection. And in that book of fables, there was the story of the ant and the grasshoppers. The grasshopper spent all his time through the spring and the summer having fun, tripping along in the woods, being happy and gay, while the industrious little ants worked hard to store up enough food for the winter. And the ants asked the grasshopper, "Why aren't you doing anything for yourself? Why are you not gathering food?" And the reply from the grasshopper was, "Well, there's plenty of time to do that. I'm just out having fun." And before the grasshopper knew it, winter set in, and he found himself out in the cold without anything to eat. And it was lucky for him that the grasshoppers were good friends, and they took him in and they fed him. Your worst enemy at this point, ladies and gentlemen, is procrastination. And excuse me, I'm going to have a chew of tobacco, which I enjoy doing and which I'll never give up, no matter what these scumbags tell me is good for my health, because I'm supposed to live in a free society, and if I want to chew tobacco, I'm going to. But anyway, getting back to my point, your worst enemy is procrastination. If you find ammunition available in your local gun stores and it matches the calibers of the weapons that you own, I'm telling you right now that you should buy it at this very moment. Do not wait, or you will be caught like the grasshopper out in the cold. And we are going to go back to the screen, and we're going to continue with this article. So whenever the government wants to tighten the supply of ammunition, all they have to do is invoke their contracts and order more for themselves. Meanwhile, Obama appears to be doing other things to restrict the amount of ammo that gets in the hands of private gun owners. For example, there are reports that the Obama administration plans to use executive orders to greatly restrict the importation of ammo from overseas. So if anything, the shortage of ammunition is only going to get worse, ladies and gentlemen, not better. Meanwhile, the panic buying of physical gold and physical silver that we have seen lately has really run down inventories. According to Reuters, demand has become so intense that the U.S. Mint has suspended sales of gold coins for the first time since 2009. The U.S. Mint said it has suspended sales of its 1/10 ounce American Eagle gold bullion coins as surging demand after bullions plunged to 2-year lows depleted the government's inventory. This marks the first time it has stopped selling gold products since November 2009, dealers said. At the same time, precious metal dealers all over the country are scrambling to meet the voracious demand that they have been seeing this month. The following is an excerpt from a letter that the CEO of Texas Precious Metals recently sent out to his customers. The physical silver market is, in a word, ugly. There is no telling at this point when mint inventories will return to normal. But you can be sure it will not happen within the next 8 weeks. Most dealers at this point are selling their current customer demand forward, meaning they are selling product they do not presently have, expecting to pull from future mint allocations. Consequently, future allocations will face pressure from today's demand. It is not my intent here to comment on the business practices of other companies, but I will say that no one can possibly predict future allocations at the time. The U.S. Mint, for example, releases its allocations weekly, and until then, dealers have no insight into allocation levels. Last week, we turned away business in excess of 100,000 ounces of silver because of stock depletion. However, we stand by the notion that it is better to lose a sale than to lose a customer by delaying delivery 2 months or more. A similar thing is happening over in Asia. You remember, ladies and gentlemen, that Asia and certain parts of Europe are experiencing their own economic difficulties. A similar thing is happening over in Asia. According to the Financial Times, soaring demand has caused a shortage of gold at the Hong Kong Gold and Silver Exchange Society. Haywood Cheng, president of the Hong Kong Gold and Silver Exchange Society, said the exchange had effectively run out of most of its holdings as members looked to meet a shortfall in supply amid rampant retail demand for gold products. In terms of volume, I haven't seen this gold rush for over 20 years, he told the Financial Times on Monday, adding that the exchange only had around 20 1-kilogram bars and 105 tail bars left in its inventory. Older members who have been in the business for 50 years haven't seen such a thing. But most disturbing of all is what Jim Sinclair told King World News recently. Apparently his friend went to get his gold out of a Swiss bank the other day and they refused to give it to him. A person that I know with significant deposits in one of the primary Swiss banks in allocated gold wanted to take out his gold and was just refused on the basis of directives from the central bank. They told him that the amount was in excess of 200,000 Swiss francs and that the central bank had instructed them not to do it because it has to do with anti-terrorism and anti-money laundering precautions. Now isn't that a hoot, ladies and gentlemen? Anti-terrorism and anti-money laundering precautions. What they are doing is they are trying to keep people from having what rightfully belongs to them. And it's going to happen here in the United States. If you own gold and you have it in a bank deposit box, in a vault in a bank, I suggest that you get it out of there as fast as you can. I really wonder why those are precautions or whether the gold simply isn't there. Now you tell me that a London delivery has basically failed. It has to raise our suspicions that the lack of physical gold behind the paper gold is literally so severe that we are coming to understand that it is in fact not there. The gold that people think is stored is not stored, and the inventory of the warehouses for exchanges may not be holding deliverable gold. There has always been speculation about whether or not the physical gold the U.S. claims to store is in fact in those vaults. The greatest train robbery in history might be all of the gold, and it would be only something like we have described above that would happen right before gold makes historic highs. There simply is no gold behind the paper. One example is Amro, a second is your example with Maguire, and a third is my dear friend who was refused his gold on the basis that its value was too high. Remember, this friend of mine had his gold in an allocated amount in storage at a major Swiss bank. I repeat, there is no gold. Ladies and gentlemen, these economic problems that the world is facing are only going to be exacerbated. It is simply impossible for the governments of the world to pay off their debts. And who are the debt holders, the lien holders? It's the international bankers, ladies and gentlemen. They own, in essence, every country in the world. And they are about, within the next months and years, to start foreclosing on those debts. They are going to demand payment in full. And we're already seeing this with the crisis that was recently transpired in the nation of Cyprus. And that is going to spread, ladies and gentlemen, like a cancer all over this world. I was having breakfast the other day in a restaurant, and I just happened to open up the financial section of the newspaper, and I found an article that was talking about Spain, and of course, they're not going to put that on the front page of their news. They're going to put some silly sports story in the front page to keep you distracted from what's really going on in the world. But anyway, the unemployment rate right now, ladies and gentlemen, in Spain is 27%. It's risen 2% in the last year. The problems in Europe are only getting worse. They're not getting better, and they are not getting better here in the United States. And if you believe that, ladies and gentlemen, you're living in a pipe dream. And we are going to go to some current news because I believe that this is very important. Because it deals with the Boston bombing. don't believe that was my article that I wanted here. I'm going to go back and see if I've got the right one here. And here it is. And since this is fresh in the news, I believe that I have an obligation to cover it. And as I said, these two blogs, I believe, are very good blogs. He's direct, and he's concise, and he's to the point without his personal bias, I believe. He cuts right through the meat of the matter, and he asks the questions that I believe should be asked. So we're going to go and we're going to discuss from the blog The American Dream, the end of theamericandream.com, and we're going to talk about the Boston bombing. If I can get that to come up, we're going to bring that in a little bit. And we'll go to the 3D mix, and I'm going to read this article. And it says, it's entitled, the lead-in is 17 unanswered questions about the Boston Marathon bombing that the media is afraid to ask. We will never learn the full truth about the Boston Marathon bombing. Personally, I have been looking into this attack for days, and I just keep coming up with more questions than answers. At this point, I honestly have no idea what really happened. Why was a bomb drill being held on the day of the attack? Why have authorities denied that a bomb drill was taking place? Were Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, and excuse me if I pronounce their names wrong, acting alone? What was the nature of their previous contacts with the FBI and other federal agencies? Why did the FBI at first deny that they had been in contact with the Tsarnaev brothers previously? Why was the investigation of a mysterious Saudi national with familial links to Al-Qaeda suddenly dropped shortly after the Saudi ambassador held an unscheduled meeting with Barack Obama? Why did Michelle Obama subsequently visit the mysterious Saudi national in the hospital? If you're looking for answers to these questions, I am afraid that I don't have them at this point. But what alarms me is that the mainstream media seems to be afraid to ask any of the hard questions that they should be asking. They just seem to swallow whatever the authorities tell them, hook, line, and sinker, without following up on any of the things in this case that simply do not seem to make sense. And we're going to continue with the article here. And I gotta let that load up, and here we go. Excuse me. So what kinds of questions should they be asking? The following are 17 unanswered questions about the Boston Marathon bombing that the media appears to be afraid to ask. Number 1. Why were runners being told that a bomb squad drill was taking place during the Boston Marathon? The following is from an article by Natural News. Alastair Stevenson is a veteran marathon runner who has competed in dozens of marathons around the world, including the London Marathon. He's very familiar with the security typically found at marathons, and he immediately noticed something odd about the Boston Marathon security. They kept making announcements on the loudspeaker that it was just a drill and there was nothing to worry about. It seemed like there was some sort of threat, but they kept telling us that it was just a drill. He was quoted as saying by local15tv.com. In the interview, you'll hear Stevenson say, "At the start of the event, at the athletes' village, there were people on the roof looking down on the village at the start. There were dogs with their handlers going around sniffing for explosives. We were told on a loud announcement that we shouldn't be concerned and that it was just a drill. And maybe it was just a drill, but I've never seen anything like that. Not at any marathon that I've ever been to. You know, that just concerned me that the only race that I've seen in my life where they had dogs sniffing for explosions, and that's the only place where there had been explosions. 2. Why did authorities deny that a bomb squad drill was being held? 3. According to the Mirror, the FBI is reportedly hunting a 12-strong terrorist sleeper cell that Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev were allegedly a part of. A source close to the investigation said, "We have no doubt that the brothers were not acting alone. The devices used to detonate the two bombs were highly sophisticated and not the kind of thing people learn from Google. Well, apparently, ladies and gentlemen, what I saw on my Facebook page is that they had used pressure cookers to make these bombs. So I doubt that if they were the ones that actually made the bombs, that they were too sophisticated. And that, ladies and gentlemen, making explosives is not for the faint of heart. It requires specific training, even for the simplest devices. And I've never been in the military, and I've never been in the police. But I do know people in my personal life that have served in both capacities, and that they will tell you freely that it is no simple matter to make explosive devices. If these two were in fact the perpetrators of this crime, I will bet you the $1,000 that I do not have in my pocket that they received training from professional sources. And we will continue with the article. They were too advanced. Some gave the brothers the skills, and it is now our job to find out just who they were. Agents think the sleeper cell has up to a dozen members and has been waiting several years for their day to come. And if they think that it's a dozen members, ladies and gentlemen, and if they can identify an exact number of people, then the FBI and the intelligence agencies must have had beforehand knowledge of what was going to happen. If that is the case, why are authorities in Boston adamantly insisting that the two brothers were acting alone? 4. CBS News is reporting that the FBI interviewed Tamerlan Tsarnaev back in 2011. The mother of the two Tsarnaev brothers insists that the FBI had been in contact with them for up to 5 years. At first, the FBI denied any previous contact with the two suspects. Will we ever learn the true scope of the previous relationship between the FBI and the Tsarnaev brothers? 5. Debka is reporting that the Tsarnaev brothers were double agents which had been hired by U.S. and Saudi intelligence to penetrate the Wahhabi jihadist networks, which, helped by Saudi financial institutions, had spread across the rest of Russian Caucasia. Could this possibly be true? If so, will the American people be told the truth about these links? According to their uncle, there were mentors that radicalized the Tsarnaev brothers. So precisely who were these mentors? 7. What happened during Tamerlan Tsarnaev's trip to Dagestan and Chechnya last year? 8. Were the Tsarnaev brothers in contact with a rebel leader named Doko Umarov, who is known as Russia's bin Laden? 9. Did Tamerlan Tsarnaev post a video on YouTube last summer that expresses a belief that the 12th Imam Mahdi will soon come and that an Islamic army with black flags will arise out of a province in Iran known as Khorasan? 10. Why aren't we being told that the pressure cooker bombs used in the Boston Marathon attacks are very similar to the kind of pressure cooker bombs that are commonly used in the Middle East? The Daily Beast has confirmed with U.S. counterterrorism officials that the bombs placed Monday at the marathon were made from pressure cookers, a crude kind of explosive favored by insurgents in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Well, previously in this article, ladies and gentlemen, they said that the devices were quite sophisticated. So who exactly is telling the truth? And we will continue. A recipe for a bomb that uses the pressure cooker was part of the debut issue of Inspire, the English-language online magazine of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. 11. Initially we were told that the Saudi national Abdul Rahman Ali al-Arabi was a person of interest in the case, but now he is scheduled to leave the country with the full blessing of the U.S. government. Why is there such a rush to get him out of the United States? 12. Why aren't we being told that the Abdul Rahman Ali al-Arabi was photographed with two other Saudis in the vicinity of the Boston Marathon bombings? 13. Why aren't we being told of the shocking familial links that Abdul Rahman Ali al-Arabi has to known members of Al-Qaeda? The following is from research compiled by Walid Shubat. Many from al-Arabi's clan are steeped in terrorism and are members of Al-Qaeda. Out of a list of 85 terrorists listed by the Saudi government shows several of al-Arabi clan to have been active fighters in Al-Qaeda. And I'm not going to read these, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to scroll down and I'm going to zoom them in so you can see the names. And I'll scroll down slow so you can see just what they were talking about. And I'm going to go down, and I'm going to continue with the questions that he's asking in the blog. 14. Why did U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry have a private meeting with a Saudi foreign minister shortly after Abdul Rahman Ali al-Rabi was identified as a potential suspect? Why did Barack Obama hold an unscheduled meeting with the ambassador from Saudi Arabia shortly after Abdul Rahman Ali al-Rabi was identified as a potential suspect? Why did Michelle Obama visit Abdul Rahman Ali al-Rabi in the hospital? Why did numerous mainstream media outlets openly suggest that the right-wing extremists were behind the bombings and the immediate aftermath of the attack? Are there any other unanswered questions that you would like to add to this list? And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, that the American people, excuse me, have to get a drink of my soda. I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, that there's going to be plenty of questions that the quote-unquote mainstream media are going to refuse to ask the American people, or refuse to give the answers to the American people. And what I'm going to do, lead up in the last hour of the show, I'm going to go back and I'm going to find another article that leads up into the last hour of the broadcast. And I believe that this is very important, because what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to lead up to official documentation. I'm going to lead up to official documentation with this first article. And once we get to the document that I have, you're going to understand that this man that has this blog, I believe, is a very good researcher, and that he tells it like it is, ladies and gentlemen. And we are going to go to this article. We'll head to the 3D mix. And we're going to talk about this. And it says, 19 signs that America is being systematically transferred into a giant surveillance grid. You are being watched, ladies and gentlemen. You are being watched. The control freaks that hold power in the United States have become absolutely obsessed with surveillance. They are constantly attempting to convince the American people that we are all safer when virtually everything we do is watched, monitored, tracked, and recorded. Our country is being systematically transformed into a giant surveillance grid far more comprehensive than anything George Orwell ever dreamed of. If you still believe that there is such a thing as privacy in this day and age, you are being delusional. Every single piece of electronic communication is monitored and stored. In fact, they know that you are reading this article right now. But even if you get rid of all your electronic devices, you would still be constantly monitored. As you will read about below, a rapidly growing nationwide network of facial recognition cameras, quote, pre-crime, unquote, surveillance devices, voice recorders, mobile backscatter vans, aerial drones, and automated license plate, and automated license plate readers are constantly feeding data about us back to, ladies and gentlemen, to the government. In addition, private companies involved in data mining are gathering literally trillions upon trillions of data points about individual Americans each year. So there is no escape from the surveillance grid. In fact, it has become just about impossible to keep it from growing. The surveillance grid is expanding in thousands of different ways, so even if you stopped one form of surveillance, you would hardly make a dent in the astounding growth of this system. What we desperately need is a fundamental cultural awakening to the importance of liberty, freedom, and privacy. Without such an awakening, the United States, along with the rest of the planet, is going to head into a world that will make 1984 by George Orwell look like a cheery story about a Sunday picnic. The following are 19 signs that America is being systematically transformed into a giant surveillance grid. 1. New software that will store and analyze millions of our voices. Do you know that there is software that can positively identify you using your voice in just a matter of seconds? Law enforcement authorities all over the U.S. are very eager to begin using new Russian software that will enable them to store and analyze millions of voices. Voice Grid Nation is a system that uses advanced algorithms to match identities to voices. Bought by the U.S. by Russia's Speech Technology Center, it claims to be capable of allowing police, federal agencies, and other law enforcement personnel to build up a huge database containing up to several million voices. And don't you remember, ladies and gentlemen, back about 1984, President Ronald Reagan called the Soviets, or if you will, Russians, the evil empire. Now I guess we're buddy-buddy friends working together to build technologies that let them track and identify everybody. When authorities intercept a call they've deemed hinky, the recording is entered into the voice grid program, which probably buzzes and whirs and spits out a match. In 5 seconds, the program can scan through 10,000 voices, and it only needs 3 seconds for speech analysis. All that combined with 100 simultaneous searches and a storage capacity of 2 million samples gives SpeechPro, as the company is known in the U.S., the right to claim a 90% success rate. 2. Unmanned aerial drones will be used inside the U.S. to spy on you. Unmanned aerial drones have been used with great success by the U.S. military overseas, and now the U.S. government is promoting their use to local law enforcement authorities all over America. The following is from a recent GAO report. Domestically, state and local law enforcement entities represent the greatest potential users of small UAS unmanned aircraft systems in the near term because they can offer a simple and cost-effective solution for airborne law enforcement activities. The report also discussed how there are 146 different models of these drones made by 69 different companies throughout the United States. According to an industry trade group, local law enforcement can potentially choose from about 146 types of small UAS being manufactured by about 69 different companies in the U.S. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I have to take another drink. Since our overseas wars are slowing down, somebody has got to keep these drone companies in business. So the goal is to eventually have thousands of these drones spying on all of us. In the years ahead, our skies will likely be filled with these things. Many of them are incredibly quiet and can gather information about you from far above. In fact, one could be directly over your home right now, and you may never even know it, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, the U.S. government is already using some of these unmanned drones to quietly spy on farmers in Nebraska and Iowa, according to a recent article by Kurt Nemo. Obama's Environmental Protection Agency is using aerial drones to spy on farmers in Nebraska and Iowa. The surveillance came under scrutiny last week when Nebraska's congressional delegation sent a joint letter to EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson. On Friday, EPA officialdom in Region 7 responded to the letter. Quote, "Courts, including the Supreme Court, have found similar types of flights to be legal. For example, to take aerial photographs of chemical manufacturing facilities, and EPA would use such flights in appropriate instances to protect people and the environment from violations of the Clean Water Act," unquote, the agency said in response to the letter. 3. High-tech government scanners that can secretly scan you from 164 feet away. A new scanner that has just been developed can scan your body, your clothes, and your luggage from 164 feet away. According to Gizmodo, these very creepy scanners will soon be used at airports and border crossings all over America. Within the next year or two, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security will instantly know everything about your body, clothes, and luggage with a new laser-based molecular scanner fired from 164 feet, 50 meters away. from traces of drugs or gunpowder on your clothes to what you had for breakfast to the adrenaline level in your body. Agents will be able to get any information they want without even touching you, and without you knowing it. The technology is so incredibly effective that in November 2011, its inventors were subcontracted by In-Q-Tel to work with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. In-Q-Tel is a company founded in February 1999 by a group of private citizens at the request of the director of the CIA and with the support of the U.S. Congress. According to In-Q-Tel, they are the bridge between the agency and new technology companies. Their plan is to install this molecular level scanning in airports and border crossings all across the United States. 4. And this has happened, ladies and gentlemen, to me, and if you've had a child, you probably know that it happened to you. 4. The DNA of newborn babies born all over the United States is systematically collected. These days, the invasion of our privacy begins just after birth. Did you know that the DNA of almost every newborn baby in the United States is systematically collected and stored in databases? Unfortunately, most new parents don't even realize what medical personnel are doing when this takes place. The DNA of virtually every newborn in the United States is collected and tested soon after birth. There are some good reasons for this testing, but it also raises serious privacy concerns that parents should know about. States require hospitals to screen newborns for certain genetic and other disorders. Many states view the testing as so important that they do not require medical personnel to get parents' express permission before carrying it out. To collect the DNA sample, medical personnel prick the newborn's heel and place a few drops of blood on a card. There is one question that new parents rarely ask. What happens to the blood spots after the testing is done? This is where newborn screening becomes problematic. 5. Twitter is being used to monitor you, and that's a fact, ladies and gentlemen. I've read numerous articles on it, and it's been reported in the quote-unquote mainstream news that this is regularly going on, and we are going to continue. Hopefully you understand by now that nothing you do on the internet will ever be private again. According to a recent article by Suzanne Posel, Twitter is being used as a law enforcement tool more than it ever has been before. Twitter has released a report confirming that the U.S. government leads the world in requesting information on their citizens. The Transparency Report shows that the U.S. government has made requests that are infringing on American privacy rights. Twitter states that we've received more government requests in the first half of 2012 as outlined in this initial data set than in the entirety of 2011. 6. Your cell phone is spying on you. If you want to have no privacy whatsoever, own a cell phone and carry it around with you constantly. Your cell phone is constantly tracking everywhere that you go, and it is constantly making a record of everything you do with it. For example, did you know that authorities are using cell phones to record the identities of people that attend street protests? The following is what one private investigator recently told a stunned audience. One of the biggest changes is the ability to track your physical location. I'm sorry I came in at the end of the previous talk. I heard them talk about surveying cell phones with a drone in a wide area. This is something that is done routinely now. I can tell you that everybody that attended an Occupy Wall Street protest and didn't turn their cell phone off or put it at sometimes even if they did, the identity of that cell phone has been logged. And everybody who was at that demonstration, whether they were arrested, not arrested, whether their photos were ID'd, whether an informant pointed them out, is known that they were there anyway. This is routine. At this point, law enforcement authorities are requesting information from cell phone companies about individual Americans over 1 million times a year, as a recent Wired article detailed. Mobile carriers responded to a staggering 1.3 million law enforcement requests last year for subscriber information, including text messages and phone location data, according to data provided to Congress. And I'm not adverse to some of it, ladies and gentlemen. If there is a murder or a rape or somebody's missing, I believe that it is a legitimate function to try to do everything you can to track down perpetrators of crimes or missing persons. But as you know, as government grows, it grows in its abuses. And they are using this technology, ladies and gentlemen, not to prevent crimes or to solve crimes, but to track the everyday activities of normal, ordinary Americans. 7. Students are increasingly being tracked by RFID microchips. RFID microchips are increasingly becoming a part of our everyday lives. In fact, some school districts are now using them to track school attendance. Just check out what is happening in one school district down in Texas. Northside Independent School District plans to track students next year or on 2 of its campuses using technology implanted in their student identification cards in a trial that could eventually include all 112 of its schools and all of its nearly 100,000 students. District officials said that the radio frequency identification system, RFID tags, would improve safety by allowing them to locate students and count them more accurately at the beginning of the school day to help offset cuts in state funding, which is partly based on attendance. 3. Spy cams in hospitals to monitor hand washing. Would you want a surveillance camera watching you in the restroom? Don't laugh, this is actually happening in some places. The following is from a recent Natural News article. Here goes the last great American sanctuary from intrusion. Bathrooms with spy cams. Going to the bathroom has now been monitored in a hospital in New York, where sensors were placed on the doors to identify workers entering and exiting, and cameras placed to view sinks to ensure proper hand hygiene. 9. Spyware that monitors the behavior of government workers. According to the Washington Post, the federal government is now actually using advanced spyware to closely monitor the behavior of some government employees while they are at work. When the Food and Drug Administration started spying on a group of agency scientists, it installed monitoring software on their laptop computers to capture their communications. The software sold by SpectreSoft of Vero Beach, Florida, could do more than vacuum up the scientists' emails as they complained to lawmakers and others about medical devices they thought were dangerous. It could be programmed to intercept a tweet or Facebook post. It could snap screenshots of their computers. It could even track an employee's keystrokes, retrieve files from hard drives, or search for keywords. 10. And this is a very big one, ladies and gentlemen, that all of you should be aware about. The NSA warrantless surveillance programs. Virtually every single electronic communication in the world, including all phone calls, all faxes, and all emails, is intercepted and recorded by an international surveillance network run by the NSA and several other large international intelligence agencies. For a long time, this was an open secret that everyone kind of knew about, but that nobody ever did anything about. Fortunately, the Electronic Frontier Foundation is now fighting back, and they have 3 former NSA employees on their side. 3 whistleblowers, all former employees of the National Security Agency, have come forward to give evidence in the Electronic Frontier Foundation's lawsuit against the government's illegal mass surveillance program, Jewel versus NSA. In a motion filed today, that 3 former intelligence analysts confirmed that the NSA has, or is in the process of obtaining, the capability to seize and store most electronic communications passing through its U.S. intercept centers, such as the secret room at the AT&T facility in San Francisco, first disclosed by retired AT&T technician Mark Klein in early 2006. For years, ladies and gentlemen, government lawyers have been arguing that our case is too secret for the courts to consider, despite the mounting confirmation of widespread mass illegal surveillance of ordinary people, said EFF legal director Cindy Cohn. Now we have 3 former NSA officials confirming the basic facts. Neither the Constitution nor federal law allow the government to collect massive amounts of communications and data on innocent Americans and fish around it in a case it might find something interesting. This kind of power is too easily abused. We are extremely pleased that more whistleblowers have come forward to help end this massive spying program. According to one of the whistleblowers, the NSA has the capability to do individualized searches, similar to Google, for particular electronic communications in real time through such criteria as target addresses, locations, countries, and phone numbers, as well as watch-listed names, keywords, and phrases in email. 11. Pre-crime surveillance technology. Do you think that pre-crime was just something for science fiction movies? Unfortunately, that is no longer the case. A company known as BRS Labs has developed pre-crime surveillance cameras that they claim can identify potential terrorists and criminals even before they strike. Yes, this sounds like a bunch of nonsense, but some law enforcement authorities are taking this quite seriously. In fact, dozens of these, quote, pre-crime surveillance cameras, unquote, are being put up at major transportation hubs all over San Francisco. In its latest project, BRS Labs is to install its devices on the transport system in San Francisco, which includes buses, trams, and subways. The company says will put them in 12 stations with up to 22 cameras in each, bringing the total number to 288. Cameras will be able to track up to 150 people at a time in real time and will gradually build up a memory of suspicious behavior to work out what is suspicious. 12. Mobile backscatter vans. Do you think that you can get away from the TSA scanners by simply refusing to fly and avoiding all U.S. airports? Don't be so sure. In fact, law enforcement authorities all over the country will soon be driving around in unmarked vans, looking inside your cars and even under your clothes, using the same backscatter technology currently being used by the TSA at U.S. airports. American cops are set to join the U.S. military, ladies and gentlemen, which is illegal under the Posse Comitatus Act, in deploying American Science and Engineering Z backscatter vans or mobile backscatter radiation X-rays. These are what the TSA officials call the amazing radioactive genital viewer, now seen in airports around America, ionizing the private parts of children, the elderly, and you, America, yes you. These porno scanner wagons will look like regular anonymous vans and will cruise America's streets, indiscriminately peering through the cars and clothes of anyone in range of its mighty isotope cannon. But don't worry, it's not a violation of privacy, as AS&E's Vice President of Marketing, Joe Rice, says. From a privacy standpoint, I'm hard-pressed to see what the concern or objection could be. Well, I have a concern, ladies and gentlemen. It's called the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution. And where do these people get off doing what they're doing, ladies and gentlemen? We're supposed to be living in a free society. What is happening here in America is happened before. And only now the technology is greater. It happened in Germany. They are creating a police state right in front of our faces, ladies and gentlemen. 13. Automated license plate readers. In a previous article, I discussed a Washington Post article that detailed how automated license plate readers are now being used to track the movements of a vehicle from the time that it enters Washington, D.C. to the time that it leaves. More than 250 cameras in the district and its suburbs scan license plates in real time, helping police pinpoint stolen cars and fleeing killers. But the program quietly has expanded beyond what anyone had imagined even a few years ago. With virtually no public debate, police agencies have begun storing the information from the cameras, building databases that document the travels of millions of vehicles. Nowhere is that more prevalent than in the district, which has more than one plate reader per square mile, the highest concentration in the nation. Police in the Washington suburbs have dozens of them as well, and local agencies plan to add many more in coming months, creating a comprehensive dragnet that will include all the approaches into the district. 14. Data mining. Private companies are almost eager to invade your privacy than the government is. In fact, there are a whole bunch of very large corporations that are making a fortune by gathering every shred of information about you that they possibly can and selling that information for profit. It is called data mining, and it is an industry that has absolutely exploded in recent years. One of the largest data mining companies is known as Axiom. The firm has actually compiled information on more than 190 million people in the United States alone. The company fits into a category called database marketing. It started in 1969 as an outfit called Demographics, Inc., using phone books and other notably low-tech tools, as well as one computer to amass information on voters and consumers for direct marketing. Almost 40 years later, Axicom has detailed entries for more than 190 million people and 126 million households in the U.S., and about 500 million active consumers worldwide. More than 23,000 servers in Conway, just north of Little Rock, collected and analyzed more than 50 trillion data transactions a year. 15. The growing use of facial recognition technology. Most Americans do not realize this, but the use of facial recognition technology has absolutely exploded in recent years. For example, did you know that there are now 32 states that use some type of facial recognition technology for DMV photos? That is why they give you such strict instructions when you get your DMV photo taken. They want your photo to be able to work with the database. But the government is not the only one using creepy facial recognition technology. The following is from a recent article by Naomi Wolf. A software engineer in my Facebook community wrote recently about his outrage that when he visited Disneyland and went on a ride, the theme park offered him the photo of himself and his girlfriend to buy, with his credit card information already linked to it. He noted that he had never entered his name or information into anything at the theme park or indicated that he wanted a photo or alerted the humans at the ride to who he and his girlfriend were. So he said, based on his professional experience, the system had to have been using facial recognition technology. He had never signed an agreement allowing them to do so, and he declared that this use was illegal. He also claimed that Disney had recently shared data from facial recognition technology with the United States military. Yes, I know, it sounds like a paranoid rant, except that it turned out to be true. News 21, supported by the Carnegie and Knight Foundations, reports that Disney's sites are indeed controlled by face recognition technology, that the military is interested in the technology, and that the face recognition contractor, Identix, has contracts with the U.S. government for technology that identifies individuals in a crowd. 16. Rapid DNA testing. But what law enforcement authorities like even better than facial recognition technology is DNA testing. The following is from a recent article by Ellen Mesmer. It's been the FBI's dream for years to do near-instant DNA analysis using mobile equipment in the field, and now rapid DNA gear is finally here. The idea is that you simply drop into the system a cotton swab with a person's saliva, for example, and the rapid DNA machine spits out the type of DNA data that's needed to pin down identity. Now that such equipment exists, the FBI is pushing to get it into the hands of law enforcement agencies as soon as possible. 17. I've got to scroll back up. The FBI's next generation identification system. It was recently announced that the FBI is spending $1 billion to develop a next generation identification system that will combine the most advanced biometric identification technologies to create a database superior to anything that law enforcement in the United States has ever had before. The U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation has begun rolling out its new $1 billion biometric next-generation identification system. In essence, NGI is a nationwide database of mugshots, iris scans, DNA records, voice samples, and other biometrics that will help the FBI identify and catch criminals. But it is how this biometric data is captured through a nationwide network of cameras and photo databases that is raising the eyebrows of privacy advocates. Until now, the FBI relied on IAFIS, a national fingerprint database that has long been due an overhaul. Over the last few months, the FBI has been pilot testing a facial recognition system, and soon detectives will also be able to search the system for other biometrics such as DNA records and iris scans. The NYPD's Domain Awareness System. Local law enforcement agencies around the country are also spending big bucks to upgrade their surveillance capabilities. The new Domain Awareness System that the NYPD just put in was described in a recent article by Neil Ungerleider. The New York Police Department is embracing online surveillance in a wide-eyed way. Representatives from Microsoft and the NYPD announced the launch of their new Domain Awareness System at a Lower Manhattan press conference today. Using DAS, police are able to monitor thousands of CCTV cameras around the 5 boroughs, scan license plates, find out the kind of radiation cars are emitting, and extrapolate info on criminal and terrorism suspects from dozens of criminal databases, all in near real time. But don't think that you are getting off the hook by not living in New York City. The truth is that Microsoft has big plans for putting in these kinds of systems nationwide. 19. Trapwire. Do you know that a huge network of incredibly advanced spy cameras is currently being installed nationwide? Yes, I know that sounds like something off a television show, but this is actually true. It is called Tripwire, and I described this emerging system in one of my recent articles. You are being watched. The government has a secret system, a machine, that spies on you every hour of every day. That is how each episode of Person of Interest on CBS begins. Most Americans that have watched the show just assume that such a surveillance network is completely fictional and that the government would never watch us like that. Sadly, most Americans are wrong. Shocking new details have emerged this week which prove that a creepy nationwide network of spy cameras is being rolled out across the United States. Reportedly, these new spy cameras are more accurate than modern facial recognition technology, and every few seconds they send back data from cities and major landmarks all over the United States to a centralized processing center where it is analyzed. The authorities believe that the world has become such a dangerous place that the only way to keep us all safe is to watch what everyone does all the time. But the truth is that instead of saving America, all of these repressive surveillance technologies are slowly killing our liberties and our freedoms. America is being transformed into an Orwellian prison camp right in front of our eyes, and very few people are even objecting to it. An RT article was one of the first news sources to reveal some of the shocking details about this new program. Former senior intelligence officials have created a detailed surveillance system more accurate than modern facial recognition technology, and have installed it across the U.S. under the radar of most Americans, according to emails hacked by Anonymous. Every few seconds, data picked up at surveillance points in major cities and landmarks across the United States are recorded digitally on the spot, then encrypted and instantaneously delivered to a fortified central database center at an undisclosed location to be aggregated with other intelligence. And I happen to believe, ladies and gentlemen, I know where that is because I read about this when this was in its infancy, and the computer is called the Beast and is located somewhere where nobody can get their hands on it. It's in the outback of Australia. It is part of a program called Trapwire, and it's the brainchild of the Abraxas, a Northern Virginia company staffed with elite from America's intelligence community. The employee roster of Abraxas reads like a who's who of agents once with the Pentagon, CIA, and other government entities, according to the Republic LinkedIn profiles, and the corporation's ties are assumed to go deeper than even documented. So after reading all that information above, is there anyone out there that still doubts that America is being transformed into a giant surveillance grid? The frightening thing is that there is a large percentage of the American people that are aware of many of these things, but they are convinced that these technologies are actually making society, quote, better, unquote, and safer. We desperately need to wake America up while there is still time. Please share this article with your family, your friends, and your social media contacts on the internet, which I have done. If we can get enough people to wake up, perhaps there is still enough time to turn this country into a different direction. Will the final chapters of our history be a complete and total nightmare? Or will the final chapters of our history be the greatest chapters of all? The choice, America. The choice, America. Is up to you. And ladies and gentlemen, if you still don't believe what's going on in this article, I intend to back up what's in this article with official government documentation. And you see, this is nothing new. It's been going on. It's been going on for decades. Far back when your parents and my parents were young people, This man isn't lying in this blog. Excuse me, I have to have another drink. He's not lying in this blog, ladies and gentlemen. The NSA is exactly like the SS in the days of Adolf Hitler. When I first became awake and aware in 1992 and started digging, my father made a couple admissions to me. And when he was in the Army, he was connected somehow with the intelligence agencies. He wouldn't tell me exactly what he did for them, what missions that he was on, and it makes no difference to me. But what he told me, which I did not believe at the time until I dug further, is that the Central Intelligence Agency and various intelligence agencies operating within the United States at that time were low-tech, but they had read, he told me, my father told me this, that they read everything that was ever written down in a book, in a newspaper, or in a magazine, that they analyzed everything that was written by everybody in the United States of America. And that includes you writing your little rant about some crazy little thing in the opinion section of your local paper. The Central Intelligence Agency, according to my father, had a subscription to every magazine and every newspaper in the United States. And that they had analysts pour over everything constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, looking for what he termed as dissent. And that's why I decided to name my radio program The American Dissident. Because through my years of research, I have found what he told me was and is the exact truth. We are not living, ladies and gentlemen, in a free society. We are living in a Nazi police state. The only thing that they haven't done to us yet, which I've mentioned in the previous article in this broadcast tonight, early in this broadcast, is they haven't disarmed us yet, but they are rapidly working on it because, as I said, and what was in this article, and you can go to your local stores, your gun shops, and look, ammunition, ladies and gentlemen, is almost non-existent. Especially handgun ammunition right now, ladies and gentlemen. It's very difficult to find it. And this is all have been created through the decades while you were sitting in the bar, drinking your beers, laughing about whose girlfriend you were chasing, watching your silly sports stories, your silly sports teams, wondering who's going to win the Super Bowl or who's going to win the World Series. Those that have a goal in mind, the goal of total slavery, were working diligently with scientific precision to eventually, someday, enslave us all. And I have, ladies and gentlemen, one document here, and in original form. If you don't believe what was in this blog, I'm going to show you this document. And this document, ladies and gentlemen, is very shocking. Army surveillance of civilians. Army surveillance of civilians, ladies and gentlemen. A documentary analysis by the staff of the Subcommittee on Constitutional Rights, Committee on the Judiciary, United States Senate. And this document, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to scroll back up so you can see it again, validates everything that this man wrote in his blog. In a free society, the military doesn't spy on its citizens, ladies and gentlemen, no matter if they're committed in crime or not. And this was from the 92nd Congress, the second session, and it was a committee reprint. Again, Army Surveillance of Civilians, a documentary analysis by the staff of the Subcommittee on Constitutional Rights, Committee on the Judiciary, United States Senate. And this was from Washington, D.C. in 1972, ladies and gentlemen, long before any of these technologies were rolled out in the American mainland. And I'm not going to go in who was on these committees, because most of these people are long dead and gone, or they aren't in office any longer. They're not in contemporary politics, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the information that is contained in this document. And we're going to start by looking at the contents of this document. One was Fort Hollowbird mug books. 2, the CIA-B compendium. A, under that, cities. B, organizations. C, personalities. And here, which I previously didn't know, but under 3, files of the Army Intelligence Command. A, subversive file. B, non-computerized incident files. C, computerized incident file. D, computerized biographic data file. E, regional and local files. Files of the Continental Army Command. A, Fort Monroe data bank. B, computerized incident file. C, computerized personalities file. 5, files of the CONUS armies. A, 1st Army. B, 3rd Army. C, 4th Army. D, 5th Army. E, 6th Army. F, Military District of Washington. The Fort Hood computer. Files of the Counterintelligence Analysis Branch of the OASCI. U.S. Strike Command computer. Computerized files of the Directorate for Civil Disturbance Planning and Operations, ladies and gentlemen. And I got to go to the camera, and I've got to explain something to you, ladies and gentlemen. Computerized files of the Directorate for Civil Disturbance Planning and Operations. You see, back then, ladies and gentlemen, they knew already what was going to happen in the future because they were planning the future. And as I said before, it's illegal. It is illegal, ladies and gentlemen. It is unconstitutional for the United States military to participate in a civil disturbance. Illegal. Do you understand what that means, ladies and gentlemen? The military exists to fight and win wars against our enemies. So if they have plans for civil disturbance, then in their minds, the American people must be their enemy of the future. You can come to no other logical conclusion, ladies and gentlemen. And we have seen through recent months the propaganda coming out of the Department of Homeland Security identifying gun owners, Christians, patriots, Tea Partiers, whatever you want to call them, as potential quote-unquote terrorists. And you know something, ladies and gentlemen, when I first awoke, and I must have some sort of crazy gift of prophecy, I don't know, and I don't, that's going way too far. I told my friends who laughed at me and who have since abandoned me a long time ago that there would come a day and a time in the United States of America when the American gun owner would be identified as a terrorist by the United States government. And it is happening today. It is happening today, ladies and gentlemen. This is not the nation that my grandparents and my parents spoke fondly of. I do these things here, even if you don't think it's significant, I do these things at great risk to my life. I happen to wholeheartedly believe that, because anybody that dares speak the truth is a target. And we all must all work collectively together, ladies and gentlemen, to speak the truth. You do not create these surveillance systems in the United States unless you plan on having total control. Total control, ladies and gentlemen. That is why you can't find ammunition for your weapons. That those that are smart are buying up the ammunition just as fast as it's being manufactured. And I tried to warn my family and my friends about this years ago. Years ago, ladies and gentlemen, when I found this out, all this out. And I was laughed at. I wonder how many of them now are laughing that they, in this day and age, April the 27th, 2013, can go in the store and they can't buy ammunition for their weapons. I wonder how many of them never thought that they'd see this day. When I told them these things 20 years ago, they laughed at me. Now the reality, ladies and gentlemen, is hitting home. Because it was planned that way. Everything happens for a reason. Everything happens according to a plan. A carefully laid out plan. The facts of history are not an accident. As I said in a previous broadcast, there are two views of history, and that doesn't come from me, that comes from a researcher named A. Ralph Epperson. That either A, you believe history is a series of accidents with no rhyme or reason or no apparent continuity, or you believe that history is a series of carefully planned events for a particular goal or a particular outcome. And then through my 20 years of research, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that history is a series of well-planned events. There is no other conclusion. You know this bombing in Boston? People seem to not dig down deep and recognize what's happening. It happened in a... Symbols mean everything to them. Boston, the city of Boston, is commonly known as the cradle of liberty in the United States. It was the city of the Boston Tea Party. It was basically the city where the War for Independence began. The Boston Tea Party, where the colonists decided that they didn't want the oppression anymore of King George III, and they dumped the tea in Boston Harbor as a protest against his high taxation. It was no accident that this happened in Boston, ladies and gentlemen. They wanted it to have happened in Boston, this bombing, because they were sending a message to the American people. A message that the most of the sheep in the United States, and that's what you are, ladies and gentlemen, if you can't think for yourself, and you can't learn to read between the lines, you're nothing but a mindless sheep. And if you feel offended by that statement, well, you don't need to listen to this broadcast. Because I was one of those people long ago too, before I woke up. You're a mindless sheep. You're a detriment to the future of this nation. You're a detriment to your children. You're a detriment to your wife or your husband. If you cannot think for yourself, you're a mindless animal. And that's a fact. And I'm going to go back and we're going to get through some of these things here. And I'm going to keep going down. And I wish I could get to page 82 as quick as I could, but I don't think I'm going to be able to, because Scribd always likes to go slow on me when I'm using this Procaster. And if I could get to, maybe I can, because it does have a new option to try to get to I'm going to go back up. I'm sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm going to try to get to page 82 because I believe that is the most important. I believe that's the most important part of this. If I could find which option that was here. If I can go down fast. And I'm going to go down as fast as I can. Here we're going. And if it'll load up for me. If it doesn't freeze. On me. I'm going to let that go a little bit here while it's loading up. I'm going to go back to the camera. And as I said, ladies and gentlemen, if you do not believe that we're being spied upon, it's happening. And I believe that I found a good part of this article, or a good part of this document. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to see, we're on page 73, but I'm going to go back down, and I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go back to page 75 because I believe this starts. We're going to start at, we are going to start on First Army. And let me see, 3D mix. And I'm going to minimize this, and we're going to start reading this because this is very important that you know what's going on. The domestic intelligence operations of the 1st U.S. Army focused on New England, the Middle Atlantic states, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio. Accordingly, its records largely duplicated those maintained by the 108th and 109th military groups of the Intelligence Command. The Central Data Bank, located at Fort George Meade, Maryland, reported the following quantity of records on military and civilian, ladies and gentlemen, and civilian dissenters. Military and civilian dissenters. Dissent means, ladies and gentlemen, that you do not agree with the policies of the government. Organization cards, 5 by 8 inches, 18 linear feet. Personality folders, 12 linear feet. Organization cards, 18 linear feet. Personality cards, 52 linear feet. By our count, one loosely packed inch of 5 by 8 file cards contained about 100 separate cards. A compressed inch will contain 125 or more. In other words, the 1st Army reported keeping at least 21,600 cards on organizations and 62,400 cards on individuals. Undoubtedly, more than one card was used to describe some individuals and groups, while some cards were holdovers from earlier decades. Even so, the size of these files is staggering, and would be difficult to believe were it not that the fact that other CONUS armies have reported similarly large holdings. In addition, 1st Army Headquarters reported approximately 24 linear feet of domestic intelligence publications. These included not only USAINTC's mug books and CIAB's companion, but also monthly CONUS intelligence summaries published in booklet form by all CONUS armies and the military district of Washington, Air Force, Official of Special Investigations counterintelligence briefs, Naval Investigative Service counterintelligence reports, FBI reports collected by the 108th and 109th military groups. Approximately 75% of the data recorded in the card files on individuals and organizations was extracted from FBI reports. The remaining 25%, according to the 1st Army, was taken from the news media and miscellaneous sources. Presumably, these range from the Intelligence Command wire service to the 1st Army's own undercover agents. Ladies and gentlemen, in a free society, I have to go back to the camera here. Ladies and gentlemen, in a free society, what does the United States military have undercover agents operating within the borders of our own nation? There are those of you that always post pictures on Facebook and post pictures on all the social media that say we must support our troops. Our troops, like our elected leaders, take an oath. They take an oath, ladies and gentlemen, to preserve and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. That means they take an oath, ladies and gentlemen, to protect our rights that were given to us by God. And whether or not you believe in God is no consequence to me, because through my years of research, and I've been doing this a lot longer than some of you, that our founders recognized that there was a God. They didn't necessarily mean that it was Jesus Christ or Buddha or Allah or whoever it was. They recognized that a higher power created mankind, and that he gave mankind free will, and he gave mankind rights. We are not a free society, ladies and gentlemen. We are not free. And through our ignorance and our apathy, we are rapidly losing every last shred of humanity that we have left. And as I said, you probably didn't believe what was written in that man's blog. But I have the official documentation to prove that we're going on 40 years here, ladies and gentlemen, and beyond. We're going on 40 years and beyond that they have been spying on the American people. Why does a government wish to spy on its own citizens? Because that government, ladies and gentlemen, whether it is in Russia or Cuba, or France or Germany, or here, a government that spies on its own citizens wishes to enslave its own citizens. And excuse me if I'm a little worked up tonight, ladies and gentlemen, but we are rapidly running out of time. We are rapidly running out of time to save what's left of this republic. They are using our tax dollars to kill us. They force the money out of your pocket at gunpoint, and then they use it against you at gunpoint. They use it against me, they use it against my wife, my children, they use it against your spouse, your children, against you at gunpoint. There is no reason, ladies and gentlemen, for this massive surveillance and spy network that's hung over us like a giant spider web. The Constitution makes it quite clear what a crime is. It's an attempt or a success in depriving somebody of their life, their liberty, or their property. And when those crimes were committed, the founders of this nation set up a judicial system and a jury system to punish those people and put them in prison where they belong. And beyond that, the government has no authority to do what they're doing to us. And all of this is in preparation for the day that will come when they kill the power nationwide, and they start activating the FEMA camps, and they start rounding up all these quote-unquote dissenters, as evidenced by this document. And they begin to eliminate everybody that they deem a threat to them. I'm out here with many others trying to fight a battle. I'm fighting the battle, as I said before, ladies and gentlemen, with words right now, and I hope that's all it ever amounts to. What we need to do is we need to unite. There is no such thing in my mind as a liberal or a conservative. We are all Americans. And it really sickens me. It sickens me to my core of my very being and my very soul I look at people on Facebook that all they can do is they can bash people because of their political ideology. I'm guilty of doing it sometimes myself. But at the end of the day, I realize who we all are. We are all Americans. And there is one ideology that should be followed. It's the ideology of freedom as set forth in the United States Constitution. We have the tools and the means necessary at our disposal to make this republic flourish. Not only economically, not only politically, but spiritually. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, conservatism and liberalism are not compatible with the United States Constitution. They aren't. They're not compatible with freedom, either one. All of what I've read to you tonight has gone on through successive Democratic and Republican administrations. Do you think that by electing Rand Paul president, maybe in 2016, that all of these things are magically going to disappear? They're not going to disappear. You know why they won't, ladies and gentlemen? Because we all refuse to get off our asses and do something about it. They are building a police state and a surveillance state that Adolf Hitler and his entire legions of Nazis wouldn't even have dreamt of. And it's happening right in front of your face and my face. And I'm trying to bring you this information so you're aware of what is going on. And we're going to try to get back and get through some more of this. We're going to get to the records of the Third Army. The 3rd U.S. Army kept track of its military and civilian dissenters in the southeastern United States. Its headquarters at Fort McPherson, Georgia, reported a card file, 5x8 cards and microfilm cards on 4,672 persons, 2,220 organizations, and 382 publications. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, they have a subscription. The intelligence agencies of the United States, including the military agencies of the United States, of everything that's written down on paper, everything that is printed or broadcasted. The report omitted any mention of dossiers or publications, but did furnish 8 criteria by which the Third Army determined which individuals and organizations merited space in its files. Subjects who aim to or use current activities are prejudicial to the best interests of the Army and or adversely affect military operations. Well, ladies and gentlemen, according to the United States Constitution, the military has very specific and limited operations. And it is my right, and it's your right, as a citizen of this nation, to be prejudicial against the United States Army, if we so choose. 2. Organizations and individuals who engage in or lend support of RITA activities, to include provision of funds, advice, publications, and legal support. Leaders of anti-ROTC activities at colleges and universities having ROTC programs, to include organizations involved in current activities. Leaders of leftist organizations that conduct dissent activities or at military installations such as distribution of literature and sponsorship of demonstrations. Leaders of organizations whose activities are predicted to interrupt or adversely affect Army operations in the event of a civil disturbance which involves military personnel and or material, to include organizations involved in modus operandi. Writers of threatening or crackpot letters, and I don't know whatever they deem what is crackpot. I guess you can deem what I'm doing here tonight if they so choose crackpot. Some foreign agencies that have been designated by ASCI, DA as collectors of intelligence information in the U.S., organizations that have been cited as subversive by federal and state investigative bodies. Given such a broad list, it is easy to understand how Third Army headquarters could find so many individuals and organizations to keep track of in the Southeast. Similar but less extensive files were reported to exist at Fort McClellan, Alabama, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Fourth Army. Although few regions of the country have been less troubled by civil disorders than the Southwest, the Fourth Army maintained the most extensive databanks on political dissenters within CONARC. The headquarters file at Fort Sam Houston, for example, reported 90 linear feet of dossiers and 100 linear feet of 3 by 5 inch locator cards or organizations and individuals. Since 100 linear feet of 3 by 5 cards equals approximately 120,000 separate cards, this headquarters file probably qualifies as the largest of its kind in the entire Army. The purpose of these cards, according to the Fifth Army, was to provide information to command and staff elements of this headquarters and Class 1 installations concerning A. Individuals and organizations whose activity statements or affiliations with subversive groups indicate an actual or possible potential for violent confrontation, who have indicated support, financial or otherwise, for such groups and individuals. Individuals and organizations which have indicated desire to or have made actual contact with active duty members of the military for the apparent purpose of influencing such individuals toward dissent activity or disaffection. And ladies and gentlemen, I know probably what you were thinking, that the military was trying to track, quote, left-wing or, unquote, quote, communist organizations, unquote. That's not the case, ladies and gentlemen. They have been tracking and identifying what they call dissenters. I am a dissenter, and I am no means a leftist or a communist. I dissent because these scumbags have trashed my freedoms. They have ruined the United States Constitution, and they're ruining my nation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you further documentation, recent documentation. If I can get back up there in time here to my content. And we've only got about 13 minutes left in the broadcast. If I can get up there as quick as I can, I'm going to do the best I can to get up there. And I can see right now that I'm having a problem with my Procaster at the end of the broadcast, which I find disheartening. But I'm going to keep on talking here because my voice will still get even though you cannot see my face. My CPU usage has went right up to 100%, and I probably know why, and I'm trying to scroll up as fast as I can, and it's using a lot of memory in my computer to get up there. But I'm almost there, and I'm going to let this thing go down a little bit. I'm almost to the end, and I'm going to try to get this other document up here, and we've got 12 minutes left. And I wish my computer would have kept working. It was working so perfectly tonight for me. But I'm going to show you if my Procaster, let the computer kind of die down here a little bit, and then it might start working a little bit better again here. I went a little bit fast trying to get up through that document, but I am going to show you another recent document, and this is a recent document, ladies and gentlemen, that we'll try to get through some of it. But the title of the document is most revealing. go to the screen. 3D Mix. And this document, ladies and gentlemen, is the Department of Defense support of civilian law enforcement agencies, which is illegal. The Department of Defense has no business in support of civilian. And you see, the Congress investigated this 40 years ago, and they're right back at doing the same things that they were doing before. Here's Section C. Governs all DoD component planning for and participation in defense support of civilian law enforcement activities, including domestic emergencies and civil disturbance operations, CDO, formerly referred to as military assistance for civil disturbances. D applies to National Guard personnel in reference. D status only. Applies to civilian employees of the DoD components and the activities of DoD contractors performed in support of the DoD components. And we are going to go down. I just found this the other day, ladies and gentlemen. But this document, ladies and gentlemen, I have uploaded to Scribe, www.scribe.com, and you can read through this document in its entirety. I referenced a document from 1972 where the Congress investigated what the United States military was doing, and they have not stopped. They are still doing it, and as I said, the Posse Comitatus Act specifically prohibits the United States military from participating in civilian matters. But here again, while the American people were living in their silly fantasy worlds, and that's what you're living in, ladies and gentlemen. If you're not awake, you're living in a silly fantasy world that no conservative or no liberal is going to save you from. They're doing what they've always been doing. They are gathering the data and the intelligence on millions, literally millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of Americans. And notice what it said in there. Planning and preparation for a civil disturbance or a domestic emergency. A domestic emergency or a civil disturbance, ladies and gentlemen, that they are going to be the ones that are going to be the ones creating it. You think they're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars not to put these plans in place? They're going to do this. When? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But I do have in front of me the documentation to prove what I'm telling you. Most so-called, quote, patriot sites, unquote, they don't use documents in original form. I always find, when I can, the documents in original form, because if it's listed as text document only, I will not use it. Text documents can be altered, they can be changed, and I won't use them in my broadcast. But as I said, this document is on Scribe with all my other documents, and you can look for me there. Silver Saber Wolf, SILVER SABREWOLF, one word, and you can search out my profile, and you can find all the documentation proving what they are doing to this country, which they've been doing right in front of your face for so many years, ladies and gentlemen. And everything that I talked about tonight ties in. Everything that happens in politics or in the world of the intelligence community, everything that happens is connected to one another. There is an interesting publication that I have a copy in original form. I wish I could find it. I found it in a text-only document on the internet, and I will not use it as it's text-only. It's called The Report from Iron Mountain. It's a very extremely scarce and rare book. Fortunately, there was two gentlemen in my community a long time ago that were awake as well as I was, and they were kind enough to give me the document, give me that book in original form, and it is mind-blowing. It was done by the Rand Corporation way back in the 1960s. That they did an in-depth analysis that they can make through their own actions everything connectable. As Franklin Roosevelt said, nothing happens in politics by accident. If it happens, it was planned that way. And there are some people that said he never said that. Well, he did say that, ladies and gentlemen. The man was responsible for the murder of some 2,200 naval personnel in Pearl Harbor because he had advanced knowledge beforehand of the attack, and that's easily proven through documentation. Just as George Bush, some 70 years later, had advanced knowledge and knew just exactly who was behind 9/11. We're beginning to see how everything is starting to fall in place in the United States and around the world, ladies and gentlemen. Everything that's happening in the world economically happened before. History has a nasty habit of repeating itself because there has always been a small group of people that have always controlled the events of history. In the days and the years leading up to World War II, the nations of the world experienced the same economic crisis that we're experiencing today. And they paved the way for a dictator named Adolf Hitler. Some friends of mine either have a friend or a relative, I can't remember which, that lives in Germany, and she's up in her 90s. When Barack Obama was running for president in 2008, she talked to my friends, and they relayed the story to me, and she said, my God, it was 1933 all over again. When Barack Obama arrived in the city of Berlin, they played the exact same songs as they played for Adolf Hitler. They had the exact same ceremonies. The children were dressed exactly the same, and they gave him the exact same bouquets of flowers. And Barack Obama gave almost the exact same speech as Adolf Hitler gave to the German people. We still have a little bit of time left, ladies and gentlemen. We have a small window of opportunity. But that window is rapidly closing. If you don't believe what I'm saying, go to your local gun store, even if you don't own a firearm, and go in there and look about the situation with the ammunition in the United States. While you're at it, you better, instead of sitting on Facebook all day putting up silly posts, you better put your mouse on a new tab. You better click on that tab, and you better start perusing the prep websites. You better do something proactive, America, to take steps to protect yourselves and your families, because if you don't, you're going to wind up exactly like that grasshopper in Aesop's fables. And there isn't going to be any friendly ants that are willing to take you in. And I'm not going to be a friendly ant willing to take anybody in. You had better take the steps necessary while you still can to do what you can to protect yourselves, to protect your life, your liberty, and your property. you don't, you're going to be out in the cold, as I said, like that lonely little grasshopper that was too busy having fun and too busy frolicking in those lovely little hay fields. And you are going to be a sitting duck in the New World Order. Good night, and we shall see you again.